Guys, I left you 3 days ago with the French team, having beaten Brazil 2-1, having turned in a really solid performance and being really impressive and looking like a favorite for the World Cup. And I've got to tell you, yesterday, the French subs might have been more impressive than the first team, beating Colombia 3-1 in a game that they thoroughly dominated, and in another game where the French team looked mighty impressive up front. The attacking firepower in this team is just insane. And the subs, they turn in the performance. They turn in the style as well, in a way which is usually not the case when you get the second team. And they also manage to stay strong defensively against one of the top teams in South America. So green lights ahead, full speed ahead for the French team, and let's talk about the great things that we saw in this game. 3-1, 3 goals that came, 2 in the second half of the first half, and then 1 just after the break. Colombia got 1 back around the 75th minute, I think, which was, not anecdotal, but also didn't really lead to big consequences or anything. And yes, there's a few things. So I was watching this game, thinking to myself, there's 2 things that I want to get away from it. One, I want to get the individual performances, because when you're looking at the usual subs or the B team, you want to see which players can knock on the door of the first team, and which players might actually fall off the list altogether and not make it to the World Cup. And I think those were the 2 things that you want to see in terms of individual performances. And then tactically and collectively, I wanted to see what were the pieces that looked like the Brazil game. So you can try to identify the things that have been worked on in training, are deliberate from the staff, and are really the pieces that the French staff is trying to put together. And I think I start with that because I think across the 2 games, I think the Colombia game is more reminiscent of the first half against the Brazil team, where France is dominating, where we put a lot of firepower up front, and I think dominate the game and show a lot of offensive intent. Yes, the first thing that really jumped to me is that we have a French team which is not boring anymore. And it is a big achievement in itself. I remember doing one of those videos after one of the international break in October or November, and honestly, the football produced was boring AF. I'll be clear, it was really the team would win, but it was really not that pleasant to be watching the games, and definitely not that pleasant to be debriefing them. It is not the case here. Yesterday, that game was really enjoyable to watch. Fast-paced football going from one end to the other, a lot of vertical action and vertical movement on the pitch. And I think, that in itself is already a big achievement. And I think, it's interesting because all of a sudden you see a French squad which follows a lot of the ambition of the top club side. And if I look at Bayern Munich, if I look at PSG, if I look, at Barcelona, all of those squads have really the ambition to control the game and be able to control possession and really put their game in place, but also have a lot of verticality, be able to move the ball out of defense and move it forward from the defense, and be able to have players with a lot of movement, creating a lot of movement, flowing around. I'm not going to say liquid football, but this is kind of what I'm hinting at here. We're not quite there yet, obviously. I'm not getting ahead of myself. France is not Bayern Munich at this point. But in terms of the intent of how we played this game, there's a lot of similarities. And looking at the nitty-gritty of how do we move the ball forward, players dropping back into midfield. So we had seen Dembele do a lot of this in the first game against Brazil. Now it was Akliouche and Cherki dropping into midfield, coming to help N'Golo Kante and Zaire Emery. And all of a sudden, when you move the ball out of defense, there's always a sort of 1-2-3, which is the ball starts from the defense. move forward to a player that's coming down from the line above. So either it's a midfielder or it's an attacker coming down, pass the ball to him, and his back is turned to the game, but he passes the ball back to a player who's making a run forward. And so typically it'd be like Maxence Lacroix, who was celebrating his first cap in central defense, passing the ball to Cherki, who's dropping off from offense, who's passing it back to Zaire Emery, who's already running full speed ahead. And all of a sudden, any sort of press is beaten, and you've got a lot of movement going forward. The second thing that I thought was really interesting is for those two games, you see the fullbacks having a lot more freedom than usual. Historically, Didier Deschamps, we see him as a coach who doesn't give a lot of freedom to his fullback. They have to stay at the back. Their job is defensive first. They can move forward, of course, once or twice in a game, but it's really not what's being asked of them. In those two games, you see Malo Gusto doing a lot. You see Lucas Digne and Theo Hernandez on the other side, also like really moving forward. And so you end up, it's actually interesting. It's like almost like PSG-ish in a way, because you end up with like the two central defenders who are really staying down low, and then a line of 4 or 5 in front of them with the two fullbacks, the two central midfielders, and then like one of the offensive midfielders dropping back. And so you've got this sort of line of 5 with 3 up front. And there's a lot of combinations to really like move the ball forward very quickly. And I think that's where I'll caveat a little bit as well against two really good South American teams, obviously Brazil and Colombia. We're not talking about just like random teams. Those are quality teams, which is what's making it even more impressive. But at the same time, I found that in both cases, except for the second half of Brazil, in both cases, I think that their press is a little bit distant. They don't really I don't think they go man-to-man as aggressively and as closely as players do in Europe in club competition. And I think for the players that we have in this French team, if you give them 1 meter of space, if you're like 5 seconds late in closing them down, it's too little too late, man. Like players of this quality, you just cannot. And so that's why the passing combination to move the ball forward was so interesting, is that they happen in the blink of an eye, and the speed, they're like automatic at this point. And so they just break apart the press because the press has been too slow in adapting to it. So that's stuff to note. It's really noteworthy. I like the fact as well, I think offensively, like I said, there's a lot of movement. So the offensive midfielders kind of move around a lot, switch positions, drop back into midfield. Doué in particular was very mobile, and I think sometimes it actually played against him because he wasn't really being used and being put in the best possible positions to develop the game, and yet he still scores 2 goals, which is kind of an illusion because honestly, Desiree Doué's game, not the best games that we've seen of him. I like that the kind of offensive pivot in Marcus Thuram was really this hardcore number 9. Instead of the Brazil game, the pivot was more Ekitike on the left. And so that kind of skewed our game to the side a little bit. Versus here, it was a little bit more clear, a little bit more easy to comprehend and to understand. And I think, having the 3 offensive midfielders who all of a sudden, they are the 3 players who are combining, who are creating, and who are moving. It's a little bit easier, and I think it makes little bit more sense. Obviously, Mbappé is never going to be that pivot number 9, so things have to play a little bit differently when it's him who's up front. But yeah, that was my own 2 cents from the game. In terms of individual performances, now coming to the second point, I think it's insane the amount of talent in this French team and in the line of offense of this French team. I'm not saying, we're going to win the World Cup. I'm not even saying we're favorites for it or anything. I think, like, historically in football, like, the team that looks the best on paper is very, very rarely the ones that end up winning it. So, we have to not get ahead of ourselves. But my God, like, you've got in the first game, you've got a line of offense of Mbappe, Olise, Dembele, Ekitike. And then, like, you rotate the four and you end up with Marcus Thuram, Akliouche, Cherki, and Doué, and Barcola is still on the bench injured somewhere. It's insane. It's insane, the amount of quality. And I think, the 4 players yesterday, all of them played really good game. I think, like, Cherki was really interesting. And you can imagine, like, him coming off the bench around the 70th minute of a tight game. Like, the teams that we're facing are going to have a nightmare with that. A fresh Cherki, a French Doué, a fresh Akliouche coming off the bench around the 60th, 70th minute. When you're a defender and you're tired and you've been working against Olise and Dembele all game and you see that come up, my like, that's gonna be rough. All 3, like, turning good performance. I think, like I said, Doué's got his 2 goals, so that's really, like, what you expect of attackers. But I think in terms of contribution in the build of the game, it might be, like, the least impressive of the 3, which is kind of saying something. Kliush looked great, Cherki looked great. Marcus Thuram, like I said, in his pivot position, I thought was very interesting. In midfield, because for me, going into this international break, if you asked me, the weaknesses of the French squad were in midfield and in the fullbacks. And in midfield, the pairing of N'Golo Kanté, Zaire Emery looked really good, man. Looked really good. You can't believe, like, one of them is 18, the other is 35. I guess it shouldn't work, but I mean, like, both of them are top level in their own right. Both of them have so much physical impact, so much technical and tactical quality that they just, they dominate. They dominate, and they dominate a good team. It's not no one opposite. Like I said, it's not like the most aggressive press that they'll ever have to face, and so question mark as to how they behave there. But if you think of them as substitute for Tchouaméni and Rabiot, maybe, like, I think there's really, like, hard thinking required to think of what pair is going to set us up best. Because one, if we're only playing 2 central midfielders instead of 3, we're going to be at a deficit in terms of midfield impact against some opponents. So we have to be very, very mindful of who are the players who can tighten that gap as much as possible. And in terms of complementarity, it doesn't really give you a lot of room to play with. The 2 players have to be extremely sharp in being able to work together to get the ball back, to move the ball forward, to create impact, to compensate for the movements of the player at the sides and up front. So there's a lot of things that those 2 players must do. Really good performances from the 2 that we saw yesterday. So like, Didier Deschamps is going to have a little bit of a headache in thinking, like, what is the best pairing to put on the field for the World Cup. And then for the fullbacks, I think for me, that's still the area where I'm less certain, and where I've got more doubts. And I think, Lucas Digne yesterday, probably, if you ask me, like, one of the weakest player on the pitch. And so that's worrisome, because Theo Hernandez against Brazil, I thought he was better than Digne, but I didn't massively enjoy his game. And Kalulu yesterday, on par with Digne. I think the 2 of them are probably the weakest player on the pitch in the French squad. And Kalulu, I really liked Malo Gusto in the first game, so I hope that Malo Gusto at least get to start on the right fullback position. Because I think like, in terms of his ability to make the runs forwards, but also be solid defensively. He showed a lot against Brazil, and he was playing against Vinicius Jr. as well, which is basically as hard a test as you're likely to face in this position. So for me, Malo Gusto gets a nod. But apart from this, on the left, probably Theo Hernandez, but honestly, like, I'm not super wowed by it. And I think, realistically, we're gonna have to think of how do we balance it out, and how do we make sure that his teammates give him the help that he needs sometimes against a tougher winger, because if and when we end up facing a team like Spain, for example, and it ends up being Theo Hernandez, or God forbid, like Luka Digne versus Lamine Yamal, I'll be worried. Honestly, I'll be worried. Even if the rest of the team is 110, that's a matchup we're going to be sweating a couple of times. So for me, that's still a weakness. And realistically, I wish we could just pick a player out of the blue and have a left fullback come out of nowhere and take possession of this position. Yeah, we just don't have it. We just don't have it right now. So that's the way it goes. Central defense, I think Luka Hernandez had a really pretty strong game. So that was nice to see for a PSG player. A crazy good defensive tackle in the 15th minute. And then next to him, Maxence Lacroix was having his first cap with France. Had a really good game as well. Very interesting. I don't think either one of them is pushing to challenge the starter. I think when they're back, the Upamecano and Saliba are just 4 notches above. But still, it's nice to see that we have substitutes that can be counted on in this position. And then Samba in goal didn't really have honestly same thing. He's not challenging Maignan anytime soon. He did all right, but nothing to write home about. So ultimately, end of the March international window and the US tour for this French team, and I think a lot of excitement coming out of it. I hope this is not coming too early. I hope we continue ramping up when the squad gets back together in May, June, and we'll really move into the actual World Cup. But yeah, man, this French team is looking good, and it's really exciting to see for a change. It's amazing. So here's what I had for you guys for this France-Colombia game. 3-1 for France, a B team, but definitely an A+ performance. Let me know in the comment what you thought of this game, if you call it. Which player do you think turned in the most impressive performance? And yeah, we're going to be talking Akliouche again for PSG, I'm sure of it. But yeah, let me know what you thought. As always, please drop a like if you made it this far into the video. Massively helps the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Hit the bell to get notified as well. Do all of those things. They're really always appreciated, always helpful. So definitely do it. And don't forget, back from the US now, ici c'est Paris!